25 years after British backpacker Peter Falconio was murdered in the Australian outback, his remains have still never been found. But now, a former British police search advisor says the strongest potential burial site could be much closer to the crime scene than many people believe. The location is a disused racecourse, approximately 8 kilometers from the place where Peter disappeared. Police visited this racecourse after the crime. Officers walked through the area and some searched it using motorbikes. But according to Dr. Mark Harrison, it was never searched with the level of forensic certainty required to confidentially rule it out. No remains have been discovered there. Northern Territory police have not confirmed that Peter is buried at the racecourse, and they have not announced a new excavation. But Harrison believes this forgotten location should become the primary site of any future forensic search. So why does he consider this abandoned racecourse so important? Why was it never fully cleared? And after 25 years, could the answer to one of Australia's most famous murder cases have been only 8 kilometers away? Peter Marco Falconio was a 28-year-old British backpacker from Yorkshire. In 2001, Peter and his girlfriend Joanne Lees were traveling across Australia in an orange Volkswagen Combi van. It was meant to be the journey of a lifetime. They traveled through the center of the country, following the Sword Highway north from Alice Springs toward Darwin. The Sword Highway crosses an enormous area of remote Australian land. Some sections are surrounded by little more than red dirt, dry scrub, and open sky. On the evening of the 14th of July, 2001, Peter and Joanna stopped near Barrow Creek in Australia's Northern Territory. According to the case established in court, Bradley John had followed their van in his Toyota Land Cruiser. John drove alongside them and signaled that there was a problem with their vehicle. He claimed that he had seen spark coming from the back of the Combi. Peter pulled over. He got out to inspect the vehicle with John. Joanna remained inside. A short time later, she heard a sound that she believed was a gunshot. John then appeared beside the van carrying a firearm. Peter did not return. John restrained Joanna using cable ties and forced her toward his vehicle, but Joanna managed to escape. She ran into the darkness and hid in the scrub beside the highway while John searched for her. The landscape that night was both dangerous and protective. There were no street lights and almost no building nearby. Joanna was alone in an unfamiliar part of the outback. But the darkness also prevented John from easily seeing her. She remained hidden for hours. After John left, Joanna returned to the road and stopped a passing road train. The people inside helped her and contacted the authorities. Police quickly arrived at the scene. Peter was missing. The couple's van remained beside the highway, but Peter was nowhere to be found. Investigators began one of the largest and most closely watched murder investigations in Northern Territory history. The search covered a huge section of remote land. Officers examined the crime scene, searched surrounding area, and appealed for information about vehicles and people traveling through the region. But there was an immediate problem. The possible search area was enormous. John knew the Sword Highway and the surrounding terrain. He had worked as a long-distance driver and had traveled through remote areas of Australia. If Peter's remains had been moved away from the highway, John could have chosen from a huge number of isolated locations. John was arrested in August 2002. The case eventually went before the Northern Territory Supreme Court in Darwin. During the trial, prosecutors presented Joanna's evidence, forensic material, and evidence connecting John to the crime. John denied murdering Peter and denied abducting Joanna, But in December 2005, a jury found him guilty of Peter Falconio's murder. He was also convicted of offenses connected to the attack and attempted kidnapping of Joanne Lees. John received a life sentence with a minimal non-parole period of 28 years. His conviction was later challenged, but his appeal was rejected. The court ruled that the properly admitted evidence established his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. For the Falconio family, the conviction provided legal accountability, but it did not bring Peter home. John continued to deny responsibility. He never revealed what he had done with Peter's remains. This means the final part of the investigation remained unresolved. Police continued searching and reviewing information over the following years. Members of the public reported possible locations, suspicious memories, and claimed that John had spoken about the crime. Searches were conducted in different parts of the Northern Territory, but none of them located Peter. In July 2025, Bradley John died in prison. He died without revealing the location of Peter's remains. Northern Territory police later released footage showing Joe being asked for information before his death. In the video, he continued to deny knowing anything about Peter's location. Police released the footage around the 25th anniversary of the murder because investigators believe it could encourage somebody else to come forward. The police position remains clear. Although John was convicted, the investigation cannot be considered fully closed until Peter's remains are found and returned to his family. A reward of up to 500,000 Australian dollars remains available for information leading directly to the discovery of Peter's remains. The new development center on Dr. Mark Harrison. Harrison was the United Kingdom National Police Search Advisor during the early 2000s and has worked as a consultant in cases where a person was murdered but their body was never recovered. He previously examined the Falconio case with access to the case material. His job was not to decide whether John was guilty. John's guilty had already been established in court. Harrison's task was to study the available evidence and identify locations where Peter's remains could have been concealed. His work considered the geography, John's knowledge of the highway, the time available to him, and the type of location he could have reached without attracting attention. Harrison originally identified 5 possible locations. He later returned to the area with retired FBI profiler Kathy Cannon Miller and visited those sites. After that work, the 5 locations were reduced to 3. One location became Harrison's primary target, the abandoned Barrow Creek racecourse. The racecourse is approximately 8 kilometers from the attack location. That distance is important because Harrison follows a basic search principle. Investigators must first properly clear the ground closest to the known crime scene before searching hundreds of kilometers of open country. The nearest suitable concealment sites must be examined to a high level of confidence. According to Harrison, the racecourse provided several features that could have made it useful to John. It was close to the highway. John would have known that it existed because he regularly traveled through the area. The entrance could be reached quickly from the attack scene. Once inside, old buildings, trees, and natural cover could hide the vehicle from people traveling along the road. The site was isolated, but it was not a distance that John would have needed to make a long and risky journey. Harrison also studied the timing of John's movements. After Joanna escaped, she reported that John eventually drove south toward Alice Springs. John was later recovered at a petrol station in Alice Springs. When investigators considered the journey time, Harrison concluded that approximately 19 minutes of John's movements were not accounted for. That does not prove that John visited the racecourse, but according to Harrison, it gave him enough time to travel to a nearby location, conceal Peter's remains, and continue south. Harrison's assessment is that John was familiar with isolated travel and would not necessarily have behaved in a state of uncontrolled panic. John had already chosen a remote section of the highway for the attack. Harrison believes that when Joanna escaped, John's priority would have changed. He could no longer continue with his original plan. Instead, he needed to remove Peter from the scene and conceal the evidence. The abandoned racecourse offered a nearby location where this could have been done away from passing traffic. But there is an obvious question. Wasn't the racecourse already searched? The answer is yes. But the meaning of the word search is at the center of this new development. Northern Territory Police attended the racecourse following the attack. The area was examined through physical walkthroughs, and officers also traveled around it on motorbikes. Those efforts were part of the immediate response to a fast-moving investigation across a huge and difficult region. However, Harrison argued that visiting and visual examining the racecourse was not enough to forensically clear it. A body concealed beneath the ground, covered by vegetation, or hidden in a disturbed section of earth would not necessarily have been visible to officer walking or riding through the area. Harrison produced technical recommendation explaining how the possible location could be searched. Northern Territory Police previously stated that officers attend each location suggested in his reports. Police also said their resources were finite and that the entire range of recommended techniques could not be completed at the time. The four-stage assessment and review of the information remained ongoing. This distinction is important. There is no verified evidence that police knowingly ignored a confirmed burial site. There was no confirmed signal telling investigators that Peter was at the racecourse. Police were dealing with an enormous potential search area and limited resources, but Harrison's position is that the racecourse have never been examined thoroughly enough to say with forensic confidence that Peter is not there. He believes a modern search could use several different methods. Drones could create detailed image of the site and identify unusual ground pattern. Ground penetrating radar could examine areas below the surface. Specialist search dogs could detect signs that would not be visible to the human eye. Geophysical and environmental experts could study change in soil, vegetation, and drainage. These methods would not guarantee discovery. After 25 years, any search would be extremely difficult. But Harrison says the racecourse has one major advantage. The location has experienced limited development. It has not been covered by a new housing estate, major building, or a busy commercial central. Much of the area remains similar to how it appeared in 2001. That gives search team an opportunity that is no longer existed in many cold cases. The original landscape is still accessible. This is why Harrison described the racecourse as the strongest potential site and the primary location for comprehensive geoforensic search. But his conclusion must be presented carefully. He had not found Peter Falconio. He has not proven that John visited the racecourse. Northern Territory Police have not confirmed that the site contains remains of a human. No new excavation has been officially announced. This is an expert assessment based on location, opportunity, timing, and search strategy. Peter Falconio was murdered on a remote highway in July 2001. Bradley John was convicted of that murder in 2005. John died in prison 20 years later without revealing where Peter had been taken. Now the search has returned to a forgotten location only 8 kilometers from where the case began. an abandoned racecourse, a place that police visited, a place that was examined, but according to the experts who studied the search, a place that was never fully cleared. For Peter's family, finding him would not change what happened, but it would finally allow the last unanswered part of this case to be resolved.